The air inside the cabin was too cold. It was a specific kind of cold, engineered to be sterile, to smell like nothing at all. Elena sat in seat 3A. She kept her hands folded in her lap. Her knuckles were dry. She looked at her hands because looking anywhere else meant making eye contact. And eye contact in first class was a currency she didn't want to spend yet. She just wanted to get to San Antonio. She wanted the 6 hours of silence she had paid for. The plane was still at the gate, the engines just a low, vibrating hum that you could feel in the soles of your feet. Passengers were still boarding, a stream of heavy coats and rolling luggage pushing past the curtain toward the back. Elena watched the partition. She liked the partition. It was a boundary. It separated the noise from the quiet. Then the shadow fell over her. It wasn't a passing shadow. It stayed. Elena took a breath, held it for 2 seconds, and released it. She looked up. The man standing in the aisle was tall. He wore a suit that cost more than her first car, the fabric dark and absorbing the cabin light. He was holding a boarding pass, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at her. He wasn't angry. That would have been easier. If he were yelling, Elena would have known what to do. But he wasn't yelling, he looked confused. He looked at her with a mild, pitying amusement, the way someone looks at a child who has wandered into a boardroom. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was smooth, pleasant, even. "I think you might be in the wrong place." Elena felt the muscle in her jaw tighten. She didn't speak immediately. She reached into the side pocket of her blazer and pulled out her ticket. She didn't hand it to him. She placed it on the armrest, smoothing the paper flat with her thumb. 3A, she said. Her voice was low, controlled. The man chuckled, a soft, wet sound in the back of his throat. "No, I know what the seat number is," he said. "I mean, the wrong cabin." He gestured vaguely around them, at the wide leather seats, the pre-departure drinks, the silence. "Economy boarding is through the next curtain." Elena looked at him. She saw the assumption sitting behind his eyes. It was a heavy, dull thing. "I am in my assigned seat, sir," she said. She turned her head away, looking out the window at the gray tarmac. She ended the engagement. That should have been it. But the shadow didn't move. The man sighed, the sound of patience being tested. He pressed the call button above her head. He didn't ask her permission. He just reached over her personal space, his cufflink catching the light, and pressed the button. The chime was loud in the quiet cabin. Elena felt the heat rising up the back of her neck. She fought it down. Do not react. Do not give them the show. A flight attendant appeared almost instantly. Her name tag said Jennifer. She had a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a professional mask painted on with foundation and hairspray. She looked at the man, her expression solicitous. "Is there a problem, Mr. Vance?" She knew his name. Of course she knew his name. "I think there's been a mix-up," the man said, gesturing to Elena. "This lady seems a bit confused about her seating assignment. I didn't want to make a scene, but I believe she's in 3A. He held out his own phone. The screen was bright. Jennifer looked at the phone. Then she looked at Elena. The smile changed. It became tighter, more brittle. "Mom," Jennifer said. She didn't use a name. "May I see your boarding pass?" "Please." Elena picked up the ticket from the armrest. She handed it to Jennifer. Jennifer took it. She held it by the very corner, as if the paper itself might be dirty. She looked at it. She looked at her tablet. She tapped the screen 3 times, tap, tap, tap. The sound was rhythmic, irrational, like a code being punched in. "This is strange," Jennifer said. "What is?" Elena asked. "The system flagged this seat as open 10 minutes ago," Jennifer said. "Vance just upgraded at the gate." "I have a ticket," Elena said. "I boarded 20 minutes ago. I scanned in at the gate. The machine beeped green." "Technology," the man said, laughing again. "Always glitching." Jennifer nodded at him. She turned back to Elena. "Mom, it seems there's a double booking. The system has Mr. Vance in 3A. It's his frequent flyer profile. It overrides manual inputs sometimes." "I didn't manually input anything," Elena said. "I bought the ticket." "When?" the man asked. Elena ignored him. "I am sitting in the seat," Elena said to Jennifer. "I am already here. I understand that," Jennifer said. Her voice dropped an octave, becoming the voice one uses for a difficult toddler. "But we have a conflict. And Mr. Vance is a platinum member." The silence in the cabin stretched. Other passengers were watching now. Elena could feel their eyes. They weren't looking at the man. They were looking at her. They were waiting to see if she would get loud. They were waiting for the stereotype. Elena knew the regulations. She knew that once a passenger was seated, they couldn't be involuntarily removed for a double booking unless it was a safety issue. She knew she had the right to stay. She knew she could ask for the captain. She knew she could freeze this entire plane until they acknowledged her right to exist in this space. But she also knew what that would look like. Security coming on board. Voices raised. Phones recording. The video uploaded within minutes. Black woman causes scene on flight 492. She would win the argument, but she would lose the war. She would lose her anonymity. And right now, tired, with the ache in her bones from 3 weeks of sleeping on a cot, she just wanted to be invisible. She looked at Jennifer. Jennifer was waiting. She was tapping the corner of the tablet against her palm. It was a nervous, rhythmic tick. "What do you want me to do?" Elena asked. It was the first crack in her armor. Jennifer's shoulders relaxed. She knew she had won. "I can check if there's space in Comfort Plus," Jennifer said. "It's just a few rows back, more legroom than the main cabin. And I can offer you a drink voucher for the trouble." A drink voucher. The man, Mr. Vance, nodded. "That sounds fair," he said. Win-win. He wasn't even looking at her anymore. He was already mentally unpacking his bag, claiming the space. Elena looked at her hands again. She thought about the ID in her pocket. She thought about the silver oak leaf cluster on her collar, currently hidden under her civilian blazer. She was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Nurse Corps. She outranked half the people she met in her daily life. She commanded respect in rooms where decisions meant life or death. She could pull out her military ID. She could drop the rank on the tray table like a hammer. And then what? Then they would apologize. But they would apologize to the rank, not to her. They would respect the institution, but they would still despise the woman who occupied it. And she would still be the center of attention. She would still be the disruption. The flaw in Elena's chest opened up. The deep, conditioned need for order. The soldier's instinct to minimize friction, to keep the unit moving, to sacrifice personal comfort for the sake of the mission. The mission was just to get home. "Fine," Elena said. She stood up. She didn't look at Mr. Vance. She gathered her bag from under the seat. She felt the weight of the strap on her shoulder. It felt heavier than it had 5 minutes ago. Jennifer beamed. "Thank you for being so cooperative," Jennifer said. "If you'll just follow me." Elena stepped into the aisle. She had to press herself against the bulkhead to let Mr. Vance pass. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale coffee. "Appreciate it," he said as he slid into 3A. He didn't look at her. He immediately opened a newspaper, snapping the pages crisp. Elena followed Jennifer back through the curtain. The air in the next cabin felt different. Warmer, closer. The seats were narrower. Jennifer stopped at row 12. "Here we go," she said. Hazel seat, very comfortable. Elena sat down. She put her bag under the seat in front of her. She buckled her belt. Jennifer handed her a small, yellow slip of paper. The drink voucher. "Sorry about the mix-up," Jennifer said. She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked back toward the front, back toward the curtain, back toward the world where Elena was supposed to be but wasn't. Elena looked at the voucher. It was creased. She folded it in half. Then she folded it again, and again, until it was a tiny, hard square that hurt her fingers to press. The plane began to push back from the gate. The safety demonstration began. Elena stared at the seat back in front of her. She had chosen peace. She had chosen not to make a scene. She had swallowed the injustice to keep the machine running smooth. But as the engines roared to life, pushing her back into the inferior seat, Elena realized something terrible. She hadn't saved herself any trouble. She had just given them permission to do it again. She closed her eyes. The uniform in her bag felt like it was burning through the canvas. She decided to sleep. She decided to pretend none of it had happened. But the plane hit a pocket of turbulence, a sudden, violent drop that shook the cabin. And for the first time in 20 years of flying, Elena felt afraid, not of the crash, but of the silence she had just agreed to keep. The curtain between the cabins was drawn shut. It was a heavy, navy blue fabric. It swayed slightly with the motion of the plane, a pendulum marking the divide between the silence Elena had paid for and the noise she had been assigned. In row 12, the air was different. It smelled of warmed plastic and humanity. The hum of the engines was louder here, located just behind the wings, a constant, grinding roar that made the teeth ache if you clenched them too hard. Elena unclenched her jaw. She placed her hands on the tray table. It was slightly sticky. A residue of soda or juice from the flight before, missed by the cleaning crew in the tight turnaround. She pulled a sanitizing wipe from her bag. She scrubbed the plastic until the wipe turned gray. She scrubbed until the plastic squeaked. The man next to her in the middle seat watched her. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a hoodie that was too large for him. He was watching a movie on his phone without headphones. The tinny sound of explosions and shouting leaked out into the shared space. He looked at Elena scrubbing the table. He looked at the wipe. He didn't speak. He just shifted his leg, his knee pressing against hers. It was an accidental intrusion. Routine. Elena pulled her leg back. She made herself smaller. This was the protocol of the main cabin: shrink until you fit the space provided. She stared at the seat back in front of her. There was a screen embedded in the headrest. It was playing a loop of advertisements. A family laughing on a beach. A car driving through a pristine forest. A woman in a business suit sleeping comfortably in a lie flat seat. The image of the woman in the lie flat seat cycled every 30 seconds. Elena watched it 3 times. It felt like a taunt. But she didn't turn it off. She needed the noise. She needed the distraction to keep her mind from replaying the scene in 3A. Do not loop, she told herself. It was a command she used on young lieutenants who froze during triage exercises. Assess. Adapt. Move. She took her phone out. She opened the airline app. She wanted to see the ticket. She wanted to see the proof that she had bought seat 3A, that she wasn't crazy, that the man in the suit and Jennifer with the tablet were the ones in error. She refreshed the page. The screen loaded. Flight 492. San Antonio, seat Helena blinked. She refreshed it again. Seat 1B. The record of 3A was gone. It wasn't just changed, it was erased. The digital history of the transaction had been overwritten to match the current reality. The price she had paid was still the same, the higher fare. But the assignment now claimed she had always been intended for this sticky tray table and the knee of the man in the hoodie. The system had healed itself. It had smoothed over the glitch. Elena felt a cold flush in her stomach. It was the feeling of gaslighting, mechanized and automated. She could call customer service when she landed. She could file a claim. She could shout into the void of a call center menu. But looking at the screen at the clean, sans serif font declaring 12B, she felt the exhaustion settle in her marrow. Who would believe her? The app said 12B. The manifest said 12B. The man in the suit was in 3A. To fight it would be to argue against reality itself. Beverage service. The voice came from the aisle. It was Jennifer. The cart rattled as she pushed it. It was a heavy, industrial sound. Jennifer moved with efficiency, handing out napkins and cups. When she reached row 12, she stopped. She looked at Elena. Her smile was back. It was the same smile from the front of the plane, but now it felt benevolent, forgiving. Here we go, Jennifer said. She placed a plastic cup of ginger ale on Elena's napkin. She didn't ask what Elena wanted. She just served it. Then she reached into the cart and pulled out a small packet of almonds. And a little extra, Jennifer whispered. She winked. It was a conspiracy. We're in this together, the wink said. I'm taking care of you. Elena looked at the almonds. Thank you, Elena said. The words tasted like ash. Why did she say thank you? Why did the training kick in so hard? Politeness is a shield, her mother had taught her. Politeness keeps you safe. Elena hadn't been safe. She had been erased. But she said thank you anyway, because the alternative was to be the angry woman in 12BB who was rude to the nice flight attendant giving her free snacks. Jennifer moved on to row 13. The normalization was complete. Elena was no longer the displaced passenger from first class. She was just the lady in the aisle seat who liked ginger ale. The transaction was closed. The turbulence that had shaken them earlier had smoothed out. The captain came over the intercom. His voice was a deep baritone, the voice of God in the sky. Folks, apologies for that little bump back there, he said. We've found some smoother air at 5,000 feet. We're going to make up some time on the descent. Should have you on the ground ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule. The plane was moving faster now. The system was efficient. It had ejected the friction. Elena, and now it was aerodynamic again. Elena opened the packet of almonds. She ate one. It was dry. She chewed slowly. She looked through the gap between the seats at the aisle. She could see the curtain. It was only 10 rows away. Behind that curtain, Mr. Vance was likely drinking from a glass, not plastic. He was likely stretching his legs. He wasn't thinking about her. He wasn't thinking about how he had pressed the button and summoned authority to move a human being like a piece of cargo. To him, the incident hadn't happened. It was just a momentary confusion, rectified by the staff. He was the protagonist of his movie. Elena was an extra who had walked onto the wrong set. She closed her eyes. She tried to sleep, but her body was rigid. She was a nurse. She knew the physiology of stress. She knew her cortisol levels were spiking. She knew her blood pressure was up. She knew that if she put a pulse oximeter on her finger, her heart rate would be 95 resting. She forced herself to breathe. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The tactical breathing she used in the trauma bay, it worked on bullet wounds, it worked on shrapnel, it should work on humiliation. But the air in the cabin was recycling. Every 2 minutes, the air she breathed had been in someone else's lungs. It felt heavy, used. She opened her eyes. She looked at the man in the hoodie again. He had fallen asleep. His head was lolling toward her shoulder. She shifted away, pressing herself against the metal armrest on the aisle side. The metal dug into her hip. She accepted the pain. It was better than the contact. Then a sound from the front of the plane. Not a mechanical sound, a human sound. It was muffled by the curtain in the distance, but Elena's ears were tuned to a specific frequency. It was a cough. Not a throat-clearing cough. Not a dry, dusty cough. It was wet. It was deep. It sounded like canvas tearing underwater. Elena froze. She listened. The drone of the engines covered it. No one else seemed to hear. Jennifer was at the back of the plane, chatting with the other attendant. The man in the hoodie was snoring. Elena waited. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe it was just the altitude playing tricks on the fluid in her inner ear. Then it happened again, louder this time, more urgent. And then, the sound of glass breaking. A shatter, followed by silence. Not the silence of the library, the silence of a stopped heart. Jennifer stopped talking in the back galley. She began to walk up the aisle, her pace brisk, her eyes focused on the curtain. She passed Elena without looking down. She moved with the annoyance of a server who has to deal with a spilled drink. She reached the curtain. She pushed it open. For a second, just a split second, the barrier was breached. Elena saw through the gap. She saw the wide, comfortable aisle of first class. She saw seat 3A. She saw Mr. Vance's hand. It was hanging over the side of the armrest. It was limp, and the fingers were twitching. Not rhythmically. Spasmodically, Jennifer stepped through the curtain and let it snap shut behind her. The view was gone. The normalcy returned. The loop of the woman sleeping in the lie-flat seat played again on the screen. Elena sat very still. Her training was screaming at her. Assessment distress. Action intervene. But she stayed in her seat. She stayed in 12B, because that was where they had put her, and she was a soldier who followed orders. She picked up her cup of ginger ale. Her hand was trembling. She took a sip. The sugar was cloying. She waited for the call. She waited for the overhead page. Is there a doctor or nurse on board? She waited for the system to admit it needed help. But the intercom remained silent. The curtain remained closed, and the plane flew on, carrying the silence forward at 500 miles an hour. Jennifer came back through the curtain. She didn't run. She didn't look frantic. She walked with the brisk, annoyed efficiency of someone whose break had been interrupted by a minor inconvenience. She stopped at the galley cart parked just a few feet from Elena's row. She opened the bottom drawer. She took out a stack of paper towels. She took out a bottle of club soda. She took out a small red plastic bag, the biohazard bag. But she folded it small, tucking it into her palm so it looked like a napkin. She was hiding the evidence before she even collected it. Elena watched her hands. They were steady. Jennifer whispered something to the other flight attendant, a younger woman with a ponytail who was chewing gum. The younger woman nodded, rolled her eyes, and went back to scrolling on her phone. It was a routine, a pattern. Passenger gets sick. Passenger makes a mess. We clean it up. We land. Jennifer turned and walked back toward the curtain. She moved like she was in a library. Hushed steps. Respectful of the silence, she disappeared again into first class. Elena turned her head forward. The man in the hoodie next to her had woken up. He pulled one earbud out. "What's going on?" he asked. He sounded groggy. He wasn't asking because he cared. He was asking because the movement in the aisle had disturbed his drift. Elena looked at him. She had a choice. She could say, "I think the man in 3A is dying." She could say, "I saw a hand spasming and I heard a glass break, and the flight attendant is taking a biohazard bag in there, but not a defibrillator." She could wake him up. She could wake the whole row up. But she looked at the heavy fabric of the curtain, hanging perfectly straight. "Nothing," Elena said. Her voice was calm. "Just a spill," the man grunted. "Rich people? He can't hold their liquor." He put the earbud back in. He closed his eyes. Elena felt a sharp, cold spike in her chest. She had just done it. She had just become part of the system. She had protected the silence. She had validated the narrative that everything was fine, that the disruption was minor, that there was no need for alarm. She looked at her hands. They were shaking slightly. She clasped them together to stop it. She listened. She closed her eyes and tuned out the engine drone, tuned out the movie soundtracks, tuned out the rustle of snack bags. She threw her hearing forward, projecting it through the gap in the seats, through the curtain, into the sterile air of the forward cabin. She heard a voice. It was Mr. Vance. But it wasn't the smooth, arrogant baritone from the gate. It was a slur. "I'm fine," the words were thick, like his tongue was too big for his mouth. "I just need to sit." Then a sound of movement. Leather creaking. Someone shifting a dead weight. "Sir, please stay seated." Jennifer's voice. "I'm going to get you some water. Just breathe, just breathe." It was the universal advice of the untrained. Elena's mind began to race. She began to build a chart in her head. Patient male, approx 50 years old. Presentation confusion, ataxia, slurred speech. History observed agitation at gate. It could be alcohol. The man in the hoodie could be right. Vance had ordered a pre-departure drink. Maybe he had 3 more while they taxied. Maybe he popped a Xanax to smooth out the flight, and the mixture hit him like a hammer. If it was just intoxication, intervening would be a disaster. If she stood up, marched in there, and demanded to check his vitals, and he was just drunk, she would be the aggressor. She would be the angry black woman harassing the wealthy white passenger who was just trying to sleep it off. She would be the problem. Again, the logic was seductive. It was safe. It kept her in her seat. But then she heard the cough again. It was wetter this time. Bubbling, that wasn't alcohol. That was fluid. That was aspiration. Or pulmonary edema. Jennifer came back through the curtain. She was walking faster now. Her face was a little flushed. She went to the galley and grabbed a bottle of water. She didn't grab the medical kit. She didn't pick up the phone to call the cockpit. She was treating the symptom, not the cause. She was managing the customer, not the patient. Elena couldn't help it. As Jennifer passed row 12, Elena leaned out. "Miss." Jennifer stopped. She looked down. Her eyes were hard. She recognized Elena. She remembered the trouble. "Yes," Jennifer said. She didn't smile this time. "Is everything all right up there?" Elena asked. She kept her voice low, submissive. "We have a passenger who isn't feeling well," Jennifer said. The script. The corporate line. "Does he need help?" Elena asked. "I'm Alal." She stopped. She almost said nurse. But she didn't have her credentials out, and she wasn't in uniform. And she was in 12B. "He's fine." Jennifer cut her off. "He just needs some privacy. It's under control." Privacy, the ultimate luxury. The right to suffer without being looked at. The right to deteriorate behind a curtain so that the people in economy didn't have to be uncomfortable. Jennifer turned and walked away. She took the water into the sanctuary. Elena sat back. The rejection stung, but it also absolved her. "I tried," she told herself. "I asked. They said no. It's not my sector, it's not my patient." She looked at the screen in front of her. The advertisement loop had changed. Now it was an ad for a credit card. "Experience more," the text said. "Go further." Elena felt a wave of nausea. She knew what was happening. She had seen it in hospitals. She had seen it in triage tents. The pattern of denial. When someone important gets sick, nobody wants to call the code. Nobody wants to be the one who jumps on the chest of the general or the senator or the CEO and cracks their ribs. Nobody wants to strip them naked and cut their clothes off. So they wait, they hesitate, they try to be polite to the physiology. They try to negotiate with the biology. "Sir, are you okay? Sir, would you like some water? Sir, please don't die. It would be very inconvenient." And in that hesitation, in that politeness, the patient dies. Elena looked at her watch. 10 minutes had passed since the first cough. If it was a stroke, the window was closing. If it was a cardiac event, the muscle was dying. If it was an airway obstruction, the brain was starving. The silence from the front was growing heavier. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was pressurized. Elena looked around the cabin. Everyone else was happy. They were eating their pretzels. They were drinking their sodas. They were safe in the knowledge that the flight crew was in charge. They trusted the uniforms. They trusted the system. Elena was the only one who knew that the system was a machine designed to maintain order, not life. She felt the conflict tearing at her stomach. The soldier in her wanted to act. The survivor in her wanted to hide. She remembered the last time she had spoken up out of turn. It was a briefing in Germany. She had corrected a colonel on a logistics timeline. She was right. The timeline was impossible. But she had been reprimanded for her tone. She had been told to stay in her lane. "Stay in your lane, Lieutenant Colonel. Your lane is 12B. She gripped the armrests. Her knuckles turned white. She heard a sound from the front. A soft thud. like a heavy bag of flour being dropped on the floor. It wasn't a stumble, it was a collapse. The vibration traveled through the floorboards. Elena felt it in her feet. Jennifer didn't come out this time. There was no walk to the galley. There was no retrieval of paper towels. There was just a sudden, sharp intake of breath that Elena heard even through the curtain. "Mr. Vance." Jennifer's voice, high, tight. "Mr. Vance, can you hear me?" The mask was slipping. The pattern was breaking. But still no call for help. Still no PA announcement. Jennifer was trying to fix it alone. She was trying to wake him up. She was shaking him. Elena could hear the rustle of the fabric.
Sir, sir.
Panic. Real panic. But quiet panic. Panic that was terrified of making a scene. Elena unbuckled her seatbelt. The metal click was loud. The man in the hoodie opened his eyes again. "Bathroom?" he asked, shifting his legs to let her pass. Elena looked at him. She looked at the fastened seatbelt sign. It was on. "No," Elena said. She stood up. Her legs felt heavy. Gravity seemed to be pulling her down, trying to keep her in her place. She stepped into the aisle. She looked at the curtain. It looked like a wall. It looked like a cliff. She took one step toward it. Then she stopped. She waited. Why was she waiting? She was waiting for permission. She was waiting for them to ask. She was waiting for the system to admit it had failed so that she wouldn't have to be the one to break it. But the system never admitted failure. The system would let the man die in 3A and call it an unfortunate medical incident upon landing. The system would protect itself until the very end. Elena took another step. She was 3 rows away. She could hear Jennifer crying now, soft, stifled sobs. Oh God, sir, please." Elena stood in the aisle of the economy cabin, suspended between the safety of her seat and the danger of the truth. She looked at the other passengers. Heads down, screens on, ignoring the anomaly. Elena realized then that the silence wasn't just in the first-class cabin. It was everywhere. It was a blanket they had all pulled over their heads, and she was about to rip it off. Elena put her hand on the curtain. The fabric was heavy velvet. It felt expensive. It felt like a shroud. She pushed it aside. The air in the first-class cabin was freezing. It was 10 degrees colder than economy. The air conditioning was blasting, designed to keep the premium passengers fresh, but now it was preserving a scene that had already gone wrong. Jennifer was standing over seat 3A. She was blocking the view. Her back was rigid. She was holding the bottle of water she had fetched, but the cap was still on. She wasn't administering aid. She was standing guard. Elena stepped fully into the cabin. The floor was carpeted here, thick and plush. It absorbed the sound of her boots. "Excuse me," Elena said. She didn't whisper. She used her command voice. Not a shout, a projection. It was a tone designed to cut through engine noise and panic. Jennifer spun around. Her eyes were wide. The pupils were dilated. The professional mask had cracked, revealing the terrified employee beneath. "You can't be in here," Jennifer hissed. "The curtain is closed." "Step aside," Elena said. "This is a private cabin," Jennifer said. She moved to block the aisle. "Mr. Vance is resting. You need to return to your seat immediately or I will have the pilot lock down the cabin." "He isn't resting," Elena said. "He's post-ictal." "He's what?" Aside. Elena didn't wait for compliance. She moved forward. She used her shoulder. She didn't shove Jennifer, but she occupied the space where Jennifer was standing with such certainty that Jennifer had no choice but to vacate it. Jennifer stumbled back against the bulkhead. Elena looked at seat 3A. The reality hit her like a physical blow. Mr. Vance wasn't sleeping. He wasn't drunk. He was slumped against the window, his head at an impossible angle. His skin was the color of wet clay. His lips were violet. There was a line of saliva trailing from the corner of his mouth, pink and frothy. The smell was distinct, copper, bile, and the sweet, acetone scent of hypoxic stress. Elena reached for his wrist. She didn't ask permission. She grabbed the expensive suit cuff and pulled his arm straight. His skin was clammy, cold. She pressed her fingers into the radial artery, nothing. She pressed harder, nothing. She moved her hand to his neck. The carotid. She waited. 2 seconds. A flutter, weak, thready, dying. "He has a pulse," Elena said. "Barely." She looked at Jennifer. "How long has he been like this?" Jennifer was trembling. She was clutching the water bottle like a weapon. "He just fell asleep after the drinks," she stammered. "He was snoring." Then he stopped. "He wasn't snoring," Elena said. "He was obstructing?" She reached for the recliner lever. She yanked it. The seat flattened. Vance's body slid down. Elena grabbed his jaw. She performed a jaw thrust, lifting the tongue off the back of the throat. A sound came out of him. A ragged, desperate gasp. Air rushing into a vacuum. but it was wet. He had aspirated. "Get the aid," Elena said. She didn't look up. She was focusing on the rise and fall of his chest. It was uneven. "The what?" Jennifer asked. "The defibrillator," Elena said. "And the medical kit, the big one. Not the first aid kit, the physician's kit." Jennifer didn't move. She stood frozen in the aisle. She looked at Mr. Vance, then at Elena, then at the curtain. She was calculating. Elena saw the calculation in her eyes. It was the algorithm of the corporation. Disruption vs. liability. Scene vs. protocol. "I need to see your credentials," Jennifer said. Elena stopped. She kept her hands on the man's jaw, holding his airway open. She turned her head slowly to look at the flight attendant. "What?" "I can't release the medical kit to a passenger without proof of licensure," Jennifer said. Her voice was shaking, but she was reciting the rule book. She was clinging to the rules because the reality was too big for her. "It's FA regulation. I need a medical license or a hospital ID." The man under Elena's hands wheezed. His heart was failing, his brain was starving, and the system wanted to check paperwork. "I am a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army," Elena said. "I am a critical care nurse. My ID is in my bag in row 12. I need to see it," Jennifer said. "I can't just take your word. You were confused about your seat earlier." The insult landed. It was a weaponized memory. "You are the crazy lady from economy. You are the disruption." "If I let go of his airway to get my ID, he stops breathing," Elena said. "If he stops breathing, his heart stops. If his heart stops, he dies. Do you want to explain to the FAA why you let a platinum member die because you wanted to check a plastic card?" Jennifer hesitated. She looked at Mr. Vance's blue lips. I have to call the captain," she said. She turned and grabbed the interphone on the wall. She didn't get the kit. She called for a manager. Elena looked down at Mr. Vance. She was alone. She was holding a dying man's life in her hands, and the only other person in the room was on the phone asking for permission to save him. Elena looked at Mr. Vance's face. Up close, the arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. He was just a middle-aged man with clogged arteries and a compromised airway. And then Elena saw it, on the tray table next to him. The cause. It wasn't a drink. It was the win-win. The bowl of warm mixed nuts, the same nuts Jennifer had given Elena in a plastic packet. But here they were in a ceramic ramekin, and one was missing. He hadn't choked on the nut itself. He had choked on the reaction. Elena looked at his neck again. It wasn't just the angle. It was swollen. The tissue was boggy. Angioedema. Anaphylaxis. He was allergic. And because he was in first class, because he was special, he had been served the warm, premium nuts before the flight even took off. And because he was in 3A, behind the partition, nobody had seen him scratching his throat. Nobody had seen the hives breaking out on his neck. Nobody had seen the panic in his eyes as his throat closed up. They just thought he was being quiet. They thought he was enjoying the privacy. Elena looked at the empty seat next to him. Seat 3B. It was empty. If Elena had been in 3A, the realization washed over her, cold and absolute. If she had been in 3A, she would have been right next to him. She would have seen the first hive. She would have heard the first wheeze. She would have reached into her bag for the EpiPen she carried as a standard part of her travel kit. She would have stabbed it into his thigh 10 minutes ago. He would be sitting up right now, scared but alive. But she wasn't in 3A. She was in 12B. She had moved. She had obeyed. She had allowed herself to be displaced to keep the peace. And her obedience had created a vacuum where a man was now dying. The glitch hadn't just moved a seat assignment. It had removed the observer. It had removed the safeguard. The system had filtered out the one person capable of saving the component it valued most. Jennifer hung up the phone. She looked pale. "The captain is asking if there is a doctor," she said. "There is no doctor," Elena said. "There is me," he says. "He says without credentials." "You are acting as a good Samaritan," Jennifer said. "The airline assumes no liability for your actions. Get a kit," Elena snarled. It wasn't a request. It was a growl. Jennifer flinched. She opened the overhead bin. She pulled out the large red bag. She dropped it on the floor next to Elena. Elena didn't let go of the jaw. "Open it," Elena ordered. "Look for epinephrine. Adrenaline 1 to 1,000 concentration." Jennifer unzipped the bag. Her hands were shaking so hard the zippers clicked like castanets. She stared at the rows of vials and bandages. "I don't know what that looks like," Jennifer whispered. Of course she didn't. She knew how to mix a gin and tonic. She knew how to de-escalate a drunk. She knew how to process an upgrade. But she didn't know how to save a life. "Take the jaw," Elena said. "What? Put your hands where my hands are." "Pull up. Do not let go," Jennifer knelt down. The knees of her uniform stockings tore on the metal track of the seat. She put her trembling hands on Mr. Vance's face. She touched him like he was radioactive. Harder, Elena said. Pull. Jennifer pulled. Mr. Vance gasped again. Elena dove into the kit. She ripped through the Velcro pouches, bandages, scissors. IV tubing. Saline. Where was the cardiac drugs? Where was the epi? She found a plastic box labeled ACLs. She cracked the seal. Vials. Atropine. Epinephrine. There. She grabbed the vial. She grabbed a syringe. She popped the cap. She drew up the liquid. Her hands were steady. This was the machine taking over. The machine of her training. The machine that knew that emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford. She looked at Mr. Vance's thigh. The expensive wool trousers. She didn't hesitate. She didn't roll up the pant leg. She plunged the needle through the fabric into the vastus lateralis muscle. She depressed the plunger. Time. Elena said aloud. Fortune 42 hours. Epinephrine 0.5 mg administered. She looked at Jennifer. Let go. Jennifer snatched her hands back. She wiped them on her skirt. Elena put her fingers back on the carotid. She waited. The drug needed time to circulate, but the heart needed to pump it. And the pulse was fading. It was slower now. The pause between beats was stretching. Thump. Thump. Hum on, Elena whispered. She looked at Mr. Vance's face. The blue was deepening. It was becoming gray. The silence of the first-class cabin was returning. The rushing air of the vents seemed to get louder. Ozzy? Jennifer started. Quiet, Elena said. She needed to feel the life. She needed to feel the return. But she felt the opposite. She felt the surrender. The heart was giving up. The hypoxia had gone on too long. The wait for the credentials had been too long. The walk from row 12 had been too long. The privacy had been too effective. The pulse stopped. Elena waited. Nothing. She pressed harder. Nothing. Silence. She looked up at Jennifer. He's in arrest, Elena said. What does that mean? It means he's dead, Elena said. Unless we start CPR right now. Jennifer put her hand over her mouth. Here, she whispered. She looked at the partition. She looked at the space. We can't. Help me get him to the floor, Elena said. The floor. CPR doesn't work on a cushion, Elena said. We need a hard surface. We have to drag him out. We can't drag him, Jennifer said. He's Mr. Vance. Elena looked at the woman, even now, even with death in the room. The protocol of dignity outweighed the necessity of survival. Then he stays dead, Elena said. She grabbed Mr. Vance's belt. She grabbed his lapel. Pull his legs, she ordered. Jennifer didn't move. Elena pulled alone. The body was heavy, dead weight. Mr. Vance slid off the leather seat. He hit the floor with a thud. His arm flopped out into the aisle, the expensive cufflink clicking against the seat track. Elena climbed over him. She knelt in the aisle. She placed the heel of her hand on the center of his chest. She interlaced her fingers. She locked her elbows. She looked at Jennifer. Call the cockpit, Elena said. Tell them we have a code blue. Tell them to divert. Jennifer asked. But we're only 40 minutes from San Antonio? He doesn't have 40 minutes, Elena said. She pushed down. Crack. The sound of ribs breaking. It was a brutal, ugly sound. It was the sound of violence necessary for life. Elena began the rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. She pumped the chest of the man who had erased her. She pumped the chest of the system that had replaced her. And with every compression, she knew the truth. She wasn't saving him. She was just making the silence loud. 100 compressions per minute. It is a specific tempo. It is the beat of the song, Staying Alive. It is the beat of Another One Bites the Dust. Elena hummed neither. She counted in her head. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her shoulders burned. Her triceps screamed. The sweat began to bead at her hairline, cold and sharp against the freezing air of the cabin. Under her hands, Mr. Vance's chest was no longer a structure of bone and muscle. It was a fluid, yielding thing. The sternum had separated. The ribs were floating. Every time she pushed down, she felt the grating of bone on bone. It was the feeling of walking on dry gravel. Attach the pads. Elena gasped. She didn't look up. She stared at the silk tie on Mr. Vance's chest, watching it jump with every compression. Jennifer was kneeling on the other side of the body. She had the pads in her hands. They were large, sticky rectangles. She looked at Mr. Vance's bare chest. Elena had ripped the shirt open, popping the pearl buttons, destroying the expensive fabric without a thought. Where do they go? Jennifer whispered. She was weeping openly now. Her mascara was running, dark streaks cutting through the perfect foundation. Right upper? Elena grunted, pushing down. Left lower. Under the armpit. Do it. Jennifer peeled the plastic backing. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the first pad. It stuck to the carpet. She peeled it off, picking up lint and dust, and slapped it onto the cold, gray skin of Mr. Vance's chest. She placed the second one on his ribs. "Plug it in," Elena ordered. Jennifer plugged the connector into the red box. The machine whirred to life. A robotic synthetic voice filled the silent cabin. "NLZ-RYTHM. DO not TUCHTPNT." Elena threw her hands up. She sat back on her heels, gasping for air. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. A frantic counter rhythm to the silence of the man on the floor. She looked at the screen of the AED. It was a jagged green line. Wandering chaotic, then flat. "Now Soskia acid." The machine spoke the words with zero emotion. It was a statement of fact. "Start CPR." It meant there was no electrical activity to reorganize. It meant the battery was dead. It meant he was gone. But Elena didn't stop. She couldn't stop, because if she stopped, the silence would win. If she stopped, the reality would settle that a man had died because of a seating chart. She threw her weight back onto his chest. Crack. She pumped. "Did you call the cockpit?" Elena asked between breaths. "Yes," Jennifer sobbed. "And they are talking to Medlink." Medlink, the ground-based medical support. The doctors in a call center somewhere in Arizona or Phoenix looking at a screen, making decisions based on liability and logistics. "Tell them," Elena pushed. "Tell them. Arrestee, witness, anaphylaxis, need, ground, now." Jennifer picked up the interphone again. She huddled against the bulkhead, turning her back on the violence in the aisle. Elena worked. She watched Mr. Vance's face. The gray was turning to a mottled purple. Gravity was pulling the blood down, pooling it in his back. His eyes were open. They were fixed on the ceiling, staring at the air vent, staring at nothing. Elena wanted to close them, but she didn't have a free hand. The curtain to the main cabin twitched. It opened a few inches. A face appeared. It was the man in the hoodie from row 12. He looked down. He saw the first-class passenger on the floor, shirt ripped open, chest caved in. He saw the black woman straddling him, sweating, pumping his heart. He saw the flight attendant crying on the phone. His eyes went wide. He lifted his phone. The camera lens gleamed. "Close the curtain," Elena shouted. She didn't stop pumping. Jennifer didn't hear her. She was listening to the voice in her ear. "Sir, you need to sit down." Jennifer yelled at the gap, but she didn't move to close it. The man snapped a photo, then another. Then the curtain fell back. The image was captured. The disruption was documented. Jennifer hung up the phone. She turned to face Elena. She looked like a ghost. "Well?" Elena asked. "Captain says..." Jennifer swallowed. "Captain says we are 30 minutes out. We need to divert," Elena said. "Dallas is right there. We are flying over it." Medlink says, "Given the duration of the arrest and the lack of shockable rhythm..." Jennifer stopped. She couldn't say it. She couldn't say the words that the system had just fed her. "Say it?" Elena demanded. "They say it's a recovery, not a rescue," Jennifer whispered. "They say..." "Continue to destination." Elena froze. She held her hands hovering over Mr. Vance's chest. "Recovery, not rescue." It was the polite way of saying he is dead, and landing early costs $50,000 in fuel and missed connections. It was the calculus of the spreadsheet. Mr. Vance was no longer a platinum passenger. He was cargo, and cargo goes to the destination. "He's dead," Elena said. She said it to the room. She said it to the air vent. "He is dead." She slumped back. The adrenaline crashed. Her arms began to shake uncontrollably. She looked at her hands. They were red, not from blood, from the force of the impact against his skin. She looked at Mr. Vance. He looked small, without the posture, without the suit jacket, without the arrogance. He was just a small, broken man lying on a dirty carpet. "What do we do?" Jennifer asked. Her voice was tiny. She was looking to Elena for orders. She had forgotten who was in charge. She had forgotten the hierarchy. "We can't leave him here," Elena said. "We have to land." "We are landing," Jennifer said. "In 30 minutes. You can't leave a body in the aisle for 30 minutes, Elena said. "People need to use the restroom." "The cart needs to go back." Jennifer looked at seat 3A, then she looked at seat 3B, the empty seat. "We have to put him back," Jennifer said. "Put him back. We can't let the other passengers see him like this. When we land, when they deplane, they walk through here. The optics. The experience. The first-class cabin must look like first class. It cannot look like a morgue." "Help me?" Jennifer said. She grabbed Mr. Vance's legs. Elena felt a surge of bile in her throat. This was the final indignity. They weren't going to cover him with a sheet and wait for the coroner. They were going to prop him up They were going to play Weekend at Bernie's with a corpse to avoid traumatizing the customers in 4A and 4B. This is wrong, Elena said. Please, Jennifer begged. I don't know what else to do. If the captain sees him on the floor. Elena grabbed the shoulders. They lifted. It was harder than dragging him down. Dead weight is a real physical property. They grunted, they heaved. They shoved Mr. Vance back into seat 3A, his head rolled to the side, his mouth hung open. Jennifer reached out and buttoned his jacket. It was futile. The shirt was shredded. The chest was exposed. She grabbed a blanket from the overhead bin. A first-class blanket. Thick quilted gray duvet. She draped it over him. She pulled it up to his chin. She tucked it in around his shoulders. Then she took a second blanket. She rolled it up. She wedged it between his head and the window. To keep him upright. To make him look like he was sleeping. She stepped back. She smoothed her skirt. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the mascara further. She looked at the scene. From a distance, if you didn't look too closely at the color of his skin, he looked peaceful. He looked like a man enjoying the silence. Jennifer picked up the aid pads from the floor. She stuffed them into the red bag. She picked up the plastic wrapper of the syringe Elena had used. She erased the evidence of the struggle. Then she looked at Elena. You should go back to your seat, Jennifer said. The tone was different now. The panic was receding. The corporate survival instinct was returning. Elena was no longer the savior. She was the witness. She was the liability. My seat, Elena repeated, Jennifer said. Please, we're beginning our descent. Elena looked at her. She looked at the name tag that said Jennifer. She looked at the eyes that were already glazing over, already rewriting the memory of the last 20 minutes into something manageable, something that could be put in a report. I tried to save him, Elena said. I know, Jennifer said. But he was very sick. You did what you could. He was very sick. The narrative was already forming. It wasn't the nut. It wasn't the delay. It wasn't the refusal to listen. It was a pre-existing condition. It was inevitable. Jennifer reached out and handed Elena a wet wipe. Your hands, she said. Elena looked down. Her hands were filthy. Sweat, dead skin cells. She took the wipe. She didn't use it. She turned and walked toward the curtain. She stepped through. The economy cabin was bright. The window shades were up. People were putting away their laptops. They were checking their connections. The man in the hoodie looked at her as she slid into the row. He looked at her hands. He looked at her face. He didn't ask. He knew. He looked at his phone, then back at her. Elena sat in 12B. She buckled her belt. The sign flashed, fasten seatbelts. The plane banked. Gravity pressed her into the seat, the same seat she had accepted. The same seat that had kept her far enough away to ensure the outcome. She looked at the back of the seat in front of her. The screen was off now. It was just a black reflection. Elena stared at herself. She saw the uniform she was wearing underneath the blazer. She saw the officer. She saw the coward. The system had won. Mr. Vance was dead, but order had been restored. He was in his seat. She was in hers, and the plane was on schedule. Elena closed her eyes, and for the first time, she prayed for the landing to be hard. She prayed for a jolt. Something to prove that the world was still physical, still real, and not just a smooth, silent lie. The wheels touched the runway. It was a hard landing. The tires shrieked against the concrete, a violent, rubbery scream that vibrated through the floor of the cabin. Elena felt the jolt in her spine. She welcomed it. It was the only honest thing that had happened in the last hour. The plane shuddered, the reverse thrusters roared open, and the deceleration pressed everyone forward against their seatbelts. In row 12, the man in the hoodie groaned. Finally, he muttered, "My connection is tight." He turned his phone back on. The screen lit up. The picture he had taken, the blurred image of Elena straddling a dying man, was likely already uploading to a cloud, or a group chat, or a feed. Elena stared straight ahead. The plane slowed. It taxied. It turned. The captain came over the intercom. His voice was no longer the voice of God. It was the voice of a manager reading a memo. "Folks, we have reached the gate. We ask that you remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We have paramedics coming on board to assist a passenger. Please keep the aisle clear. Assist." Present tense, as if there were still something to be done. The bell chimed. The seatbelt sign stayed on. Through the window, Elena saw the jet bridge extending. It looked like an accordion, a mechanical tunnel attaching itself to the fuselage. Then came the waiting. The air in the cabin grew stagnant. The ventilation systems powered down as the engines cut off. The silence returned, but now it was filled with the rustle of impatient bodies, the zipping of bags, the clicking of seatbelt buckles being undone despite the order to wait. The front door opened. Elena heard heavy boots. She heard the crackle of a radio. Two paramedics walked down the aisle from the front galley. They carried a jump bag and a portable monitor. They stopped at row 3. Elena couldn't see them through the curtain, but she could hear them. "Sir, sir, can you hear me?" The theater continued. They had to treat him as a patient until a doctor called the time of death, even if he had been cold for 30 minutes. Elena heard the zipper of the bag. She heard the quiet, low voices of the medics conferring with Jennifer. No shock advised. Pupils fixed and dilated. Rigor not yet present, but pooling is evident. Then the sound of the stretcher. The clanking of metal collapsing and expanding. "We need to move him," a voice said. "Cover him," another voice said. "Use the sheet." A pause. Then the sound of Velcro straps tightening. The heavy, shifting weight of the body being lifted. They were taking him off. They were clearing the obstruction. 10 minutes passed. The captain spoke again. "Thank you for your patience, folks. The isle is now clear. We'd like to ask passengers in the main cabin to remain seated while first class deplanes." The hierarchy held until the bitter end. Elena waited. She listened to the footsteps of the first-class passengers leaving. They were quiet, subdued. They had seen the stretcher go out. They knew something had happened, but they didn't know the mechanics of it. They didn't know about the nut. They didn't know about the delay. They just knew that 3A had a bad turn, and now they wanted to get to the baggage claim. "Okay, main cabin, you can go." The rush was instantaneous. Everyone in row 12 stood up at once. The man in the hoodie grabbed his bag from the overhead bin, swinging it dangerously close to Elena's head. "Excuse me," he said, pushing past her into the aisle. Elena remained seated. She waited until the aisle cleared. She waited until the rush of humanity had flowed past her, a river of tired travelers focused only on their Ubers and their loved ones. She stood up. She put on her blazer. She adjusted the collar. She picked up her bag. She walked forward. She passed row 10, row 5. She reached the curtain. It was tied back now. The barrier was removed. She stepped into first class. It was empty, littered with the detritus of luxury. Discarded hot towels, half-empty glasses of champagne, newspapers folded on seats. She looked at seat 3A. It was stripped. The blanket was gone. The pillow was gone. The leather was bare. There was a faint stain on the carpet near the aisle, a dark spot where the dampness of the resuscitation had soaked in. But otherwise, it was just a seat, a commodity, ready for the return flight to Newark. Elena walked to the front door. Jennifer was standing there. She was standing with a man in a suit. He held a clipboard. He had an ID badge that said Station Manager. Jennifer saw Elena. She didn't look away this time. She looked relieved. "This is her," Jennifer said to the man. The man stepped forward. He extended a hand. "Lieutenant Colonel," he said. He used the rank he knew. Elena looked at his hand. She didn't take it. "I'm David, the station manager," he said, retracting his hand smoothly, without offense. "Jennifer told us everything." "We just wanted to thank you." "Thank me," Elena said. Her voice was flat. "For your assistance," David said. "For jumping in. It's unfortunate, obviously. Mr. Vance was a valued customer. But knowing there was a medical professional on board who did everything possible, well, it brings a lot of peace of mind." Elena looked at him. She understood the game. They weren't thanking her for trying to save him. They were thanking her for legitimizing the death. If Mr. Vance had died alone, ignored by a flight attendant, it was negligence. But because a lieutenant colonel, a nurse, an officer had attended to him, it was a tragedy. Her presence had converted a liability into a fatality. Her rank had sanitized the scene. "He died because of a cashew?" Elena said, "and a delayed reaction and a refusal to listen." David nodded solemnly. "Anaphylaxis is terrifying," he agreed. "It moves so fast, even with the best care." The paramedics said it was likely massive and instantaneous. He was rewriting the timeline. Instantaneous. It wasn't instantaneous. It was slow. It was 20 minutes of gasping while Jennifer checked a tablet. "I need to file a report," Elena said. "Way ahead of you," David said. He handed her a clipboard. "Standard Good Samaritan form. Just states that you volunteered, you acted within your scope, and you are released from any liability. We've already filled in the details based on the crew's statement. Just need a signature." Well, Elena looked at the paper. It was a wall of text. "Acted in good faith. A patient condition incompatible with life. Flight crew followed all protocols." She looked at the pen. She looked at the door leading to the jet bridge. She could refuse to sign. She could make a scene right here. She could tell David that his protocol was a murder weapon. But she was tired, and she was a soldier. And soldiers know that you cannot fight the terrain. You can only navigate it. If she fought now, she would be detained. She would be questioned. Her command would be notified. Lieutenant Colonel involved in civilian alteration. It would be a stain. It would be a hassle. And it wouldn't bring Mr. Vance back. It wouldn't change the fact that the system was built to protect itself, not the people inside it. Elena took the pen. She signed her name, Elena R. Brooks, let call USANC. She handed the clipboard back. "Thank you, Colonel," David said. "Truly, we appreciate your service, in the air and on the ground." He smiled. It was the same smile Jennifer had used when she offered the drink voucher. The smile that said transaction complete. "Can I go?" Elena asked. "Of course," David said. Welcome to San Antonio. Elena walked onto the jet bridge. The air outside was humid, thick. She walked up the ramp. She entered the terminal. It was bright, noisy a lot. People were rushing to their gates, eating Cinnabon, buying magazines. The world was completely unaware of the silence in seat 3A. Elena walked to the exit. She didn't wait for her bag. She only had a carry-on. She walked out into the arrival lane. The sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple. She hailed a cab. She got in. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Fort Sam Houston?" "A military." The driver asked, looking in the rearview mirror. "Yes," Elena said. "Thank you for your service," the driver said. Elena looked out the window. She thought about the title of the story she had just lived. They mocked a black army nurse on first-class flight, until her rank changed everything. She closed her eyes. The title was a lie, or maybe it was the ultimate truth. Her rank hadn't demanded respect. It hadn't forced them to listen when it mattered, but hadn't saved the man. But it had changed everything. It had changed the narrative. It had turned a negligent death into a noble failure. It had provided the perfect costume for the cover-up. They hadn't mocked her rank. They had used it. They had weaponized her own achievement against her, making her the unwilling seal of approval on a coffin. She touched the silver oak leaf in her pocket. It felt cold. It felt heavy. "Mom," the driver said. "You okay back there?" Elena opened her eyes. She looked at the city passing by, the traffic lights, the systems, the order. "I'm fine," Elena said. She lied, and the car merged into traffic, disappearing into the flow, just another part of the machine that never ever stops. Thank you for listening. If this story stayed with you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it.